Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 60, as it was a day delay. So, what are today's topics?
Finland ends homelessness. Crimea bridge attacked. Elon Musk and Kyle Kulinski being naive. Brazilian election. Biden's weed pardons. Conservatives malding over Velma being LGBT. Herschel Walker scandal. And Dave Rubin Dennis Prager defends circumcision.
So, I want to talk about the ones that don't involve videos at the moment, and that was just recently. Let's start off with the Russo-Ukraine war, as there hasn't been any changes to the front last I checked in the last 2 weeks, but there was one major thing that happened recently since the last episode, and that was the Crimean Bridge got attacked by something and someone over the last 2 weeks. It was in the middle of like 6 a.m. over there, and although it's been like almost a week or so, we still don't know exactly what caused it. Some theories that it was a truck bomb, a missile that struck underneath or whatever, but whatever happened, it was struck. There's two road bridges, basically, 2 lanes, and then there's a railway bridge right above. The one road bridge was completely, well, not destroyed, but cut off, basically. So, no road traffic that way. The other one, I have no idea how damaged it was, but it was still standing. And the rail had like a train full of tanker cars that were going by, and it was on fire. It was still standing. Oh, wow. It was still standing when the fire was out, but then some days ago, when they actually showed footage on Twitter of the railroad, the tracks, they were melted beyond belief. That there's no train. There is no train that's going to go on that anytime soon. It's completely all bent up and everything. So,
nice.
So this, although it's not completely severed, it is definitely going to hinder Russian logistics from Crimea into the southern front, because that Crimean Bridge is the main artery for logistics. So now it's going to be scampered for several weeks probably. So, hey, that's good for Ukraine. Now, of course, the first question is, what caused it and who did it? And of course, haven't seen anything of the sort that they will figure out. Russia keeps insisting it was a truck bomb, but you can't trust them whatsoever. But I will say this, though. If it was a truck bomb, well, of course the question is, was it like a suicidal terrorist attack, or was it unknown, or something like that? Because you know how, like, always with this stuff in the Russo-Ukraine war, like, this stuff, like, always just happens out of nowhere. Haven't you ever noticed that?
Yeah, that's something I've noticed quite a bit. That happened a few times, so...
Also, maybe you gotta wonder it's some sort of internal sabotage. Like, I've seen a lot of people saying, like, it's probably like a false flag. No way. Why would Russia sever, like, one of their main arteries and hurt themselves even more? So, if it was, like, Russia...
They're already failing in the east. They don't need to sabotage their continued implementation of Sharia in the south.
Yeah, so if it was Russian-induced, it would be internal to, like, sabotage or something like that. And I've seen, like, experts that talk about this truck bomb, that if it was a truck bomb, the road section that fell into the Azov Sea would have, like, burnt marks all over it, and it doesn't. So they think it's more likely a missile struck from underneath and had it collapsed. And of course, then the question is, how the heck did the train catch on fire if that bridge wasn't hit? Which makes no sense. And of course, from what I heard, I think up to 3 people died, which is unfortunate because these were civilians. And of course, Russia's accused Ukraine of doing it, which I have no idea. But if it was, that's not acceptable. Even 3 civilians is just unacceptable. You need to plan it much better when people are not on the bridge whatsoever.
Do it like the IRA. Do it like the IRA do it, where they actually call, like, yo, get out of this place. You've got to get everyone out of this place. We're going to blow it up.
But in the end, this is a good thing nonetheless. This severely hampers them, because sure, they have, like, the land corridor and the occupied territory of Ukraine, but that logistics is not been rebuilt in the months since the occupation. Of course, Ukraine regularly is able to hit it, whereas Crimea, they don't have any range to really hit it, so you gotta wonder still what caused the bridge. But if it was indeed Ukraine, good. make sure hit it again, that we can completely sever it. That way it'll take like months or so before you can supply it. So, yeah, what do you guys say about this?
Definitely a very interesting situation. Of course, Putin used that to launch a huge rocket attack right back that hit, of course, Putin now being a war criminal, he would attack civilian structures. And of course, since he's trying to commit since he's working on genocide, that's also what he'd do.
Which is funny because not only is it just making him look worse, it's not even like strategically valuable to go after civilians. Like it's just like stupid waste of all those missiles that you need. And I've heard they've used, I think, like somewhere between like 40% of all their entire missiles from February. That's a lot. And you would think if they're smart, they would probably want to maybe try and conserve some of these things just in case if, God forbid, you go to war with NATO. You make yourself even weaker than you would otherwise.
But that's the thing, like, they take one step, say they manage to strike into all the way enough into Ukraine that they can strike into Moldova. One step into Poland, or one step into Romania, boom, Article 5 triggered.
Yep. And of course, too stupid to think about that. I mean, if you think about it, if they were smart, they wouldn't have done this war in the first place because they were warned beforehand not to do this, but they still went and did it. So, but like I said, there has been no changes. I heard, I think it was either last night or this morning, that there was a new counteroffensive in Kherson just recently, but there has not been any border changes yet. So if there is, we'll talk about next time out. So I think we're done about that. Now, let's talk about something that happened recently I was very happy about. The Brazilian elections. As, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, right after we did the last episode, Brazil had their presidential election. We talked about this back in 2021, where their current president, Jair Bolsonaro, is a horrible fascist piece of shit that makes Trump look good in comparison. And I kid you not, and it's hard to say it, but he really does make Trump look better. Going up against one of the main competitors against him was Lula, the last president of Brazil from 2003 to 2011, who was Bernie of Brazil, and he is absolutely awesome and was the best leader in Brazil's history other than Pedro. And recently, they had their election. Now, unlike America, where they have one election, that's it, in Brazil, just like in France, they have two elections. The first is the first one that just happened recently, where if someone gets 50% of the vote, they automatically win. But if no one gets 50%, the next two people continue on for election a few weeks later, which is, I think, around Halloween when the election's going to be. So, Lulu won the plurality of the vote by like 48% of the vote, just short of 50%, unfortunately, and Bolsonaro, unfortunately, overachieved. He got like 40-something% or something close to it.
Yeah. Oof.
So, it's going to be Lulu and Bolsonaro going at it. Now, all the polls still do show Lula in a comfortable lead right now. Hopefully they maintains that because the election's like in less than 2 weeks because we need Bolsonaro to go. He is horrible for Brazil. He's making worse, especially for the Amazon rainforest, which is vitally important to combat climate change. And Lulu, who wasn't necessarily that good either on the rainforest, says that he'll protect as much as he can if he wins. And of course, another thing too is, just like with Trump, Bolsonaro is threatening to not believe the election results if he loses. In fact,
he's the Trump of Brazil. And I've read a bit already that he's already starting to persecute pollsters who understated his poll numbers. Well,
that's what I was about to get to. Not only would he not accept the results if he loses, he says he might not even accept the results if he won by like 60%. Like, dude!
Dude!
Just like how Trump didn't accept that he won in 2016, but Hillary got 3 million more votes. If you won, just take it for what it is and shut up. Now, of course, here's a bigger problem, though, is that if he does lose, he might try something similar to January 6th in Brazil. Because Brazil, just like America, waits several months after the election to become president. If whoever wins, they won't become president until January 1st. So that's 2+ months to worry about, just like here. Now, here's a bigger problem. Unlike America, which has massive institutional advantages that January 6th was very impossible for Trump to do, Brazil is not the case. Brazil does not have those strong institutions.
It's only recently come out of a fascist dictatorship. relatively speaking.
Yeah,
And
Brazil
so
has
doesn't
none of
have
those
institutions.
Brazil has none of those powerful institutions like America, and they were just a military dictatorship all the way up to 1985. So not even 40 years ago, Brazil was a dictatorship. So Bolsonaro has way more chances of succeeding than Trump ever could. Now, good news is lately I find it's a little hard to believe because I'm sure they don't like Lula, but can't remember where I saw on Twitter, but some official in Brazil said that the Brazilian military would accept the outcome regardless of what happened. So hopefully that's the case, because that's probably going to be like the main indicator, that like the final thing for Lula to get back into being president is the military not trying to overthrow him and keep Bolsonaro in. So what do you guys see about this? It sucks Lula couldn't win the first round, but it's still looking good for him in round 2 in like 2 weeks.
Oh, I hope he gets through and a Gen 6 area doesn't happen.
Yep. And if he wins, we'll definitely be coming out. So come on, please, Lula, please win. And all you Brazilians watching, if there's any of you, please vote for Lula. He is based.
Please.
Be smart. Lula is awesome. And get rid of the fascists in power already. Alright.
Yep.
So now, I think we've covered those two. Let's get to the video topics now. And we're going to get to the one topic that we were going to cover last time, but we didn't do it because we didn't have enough time. And I couldn't find the exact video or whatever. And that was Finland has effectively ended homelessness.
Nice.
Now, of course, I still could not find the video from Kyle, Mike, or David Dole, or whoever it was that covered it. And I looked endlessly. But I did found this video, although I have a funny feeling we watched it already, from Second Thought, who we've covered a lot. And this video is actually from, I think, 2020 or 2021, so this is a while ago. But this was the only thing I could find, so I think we should cover it, especially since it shows progressive policies work to even end homelessness, as Finland proved.
This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get free access to Nebula, the streaming platform built for homelessness in the US. Think about your own life. You might not be homeless, or necessarily even know someone who is or has been. But you certainly know someone paying too much for rent, someone having trouble finding a place to live, someone facing eviction. In other words, someone who could become homeless without much needing to go wrong. More and more Americans are joining this category every day. The truth is,
and we've covered on this show before, all up to like a few years ago, like almost every single county in America, except maybe one or so, you can't even afford a one-bedroom apartment on minimum wage because it's so low and costs are so high. So this is actually quite a common thing that people have to deal with.
Is that in 95% of US counties, those who work a full-time minimum wage job cannot afford even a one-bedroom apartment.
Like I just
Change
said,
that to a two-bedroom.
Exactly.
95% of Americans cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment on a full-time minimum wage. Just think about that.
And the entire country becomes unaffordable. This situation is only getting worse. As a result of the pandemic, rising housing costs, wage stagnation, and the inadequate policies of our local and federal governments, the number of people experiencing homelessness and of people on the brink has been steadily growing for the past decade. That is, if you only look at the US. In this episode, we're looking at Finland's approach to homelessness, what Housing First is, and what it could mean for the American economy. In Finland, only about 5,000 people, 0.1% of the population, are homeless. And that's even with the broadest definition of what constitutes homelessness, which includes more than who you typically think of when you hear the term. The Finnish definition of homelessness goes beyond just those who are living on the street or in emergency accommodations like shelters. In some cities, like the country's capital Helsinki, no one sleeps on the street. That type of homelessness has been completely eliminated. Compare that to the US's nearly 600,000 homeless people, which is almost exclusively so-called rough sleepers, those who live on the street, and the problem starts to become apparent. What's more important, though, is that homelessness isn't just low in Finland, it's actively going down. Between 2010 and 2018, Finland enjoyed a massive 40% decline in the homelessness rate. If it sounds like we're cherry-picking data, even during the pandemic, which, let me remind you, has caused a massive surge of homelessness in the US, homelessness in Finland did not increase. So what happened? How is Finland so effectively reducing homelessness? In 2007, the Finnish government started a national Housing First program. Housing First is a philosophy that argues that to make progress on homelessness, particularly chronic homelessness, You need more than temporary emergency solutions. You need permanent housing right out the gate. In other words, housing is the starting point, not the end point. The way Housing First programs work is pretty simple. People experiencing homelessness receive independent housing immediately, without having to first fulfill mental health, sobriety, income, employment, or other requirements. Once they're housed, support services are offered, not imposed, and over time, the newly housed begin to finance part of the cost of their housing to the degree that they can afford it. It sounds pretty intuitive, but this is very different from the more common continuum of care or staircase approach we're mostly using. In continuum of care programs, homeless people are expected to make progress on any mental health or addiction issues they may have, and to pass a certain standard before being housed. In this system, housing is at the top of the staircase. These individual changes that these programs require are the sorts of things that are incredibly difficult to address when you are still contending with the anxiety of not having a home, possibly still sleeping on the street. In these continuum of care programs, only once you have demonstrated some change, which we should keep in mind is incredibly difficult to achieve without housing stability, do these programs graduate you into housing arrangements. First shared housing, and slowly over time independent housing. To some, continuum of care approaches sound great. That is, in theory. They map onto our society's values of meritocracy, of security. Only those who are deserving get access to the prize of having a home. Under this mentality, if you don't have a home, it must be because you're just not good enough yet. Come back later. It should be obvious that these programs just don't work. Not only do they strip people of their agency and come with an enormous moral burden, but recidivism is high and a huge number of people don't make it into the program in the first place because of the high barrier to entry. Compare that to Housing First. In the initial study on Housing First, back in 2003, a randomized trial of the two approaches decidedly shows the strength of the new program. Around half of the initially homeless group were accepted into permanent housing, regardless of their eligibility according to other programs, and they were then offered tailored and optional care for their individual circumstances. The other half went through conventional channels, and at the end of the trial, the results were clear. The Housing First group spent more time in stable housing, less time hospitalized, and results carried over for longer than when homeless people went through the continuum of care path. Within just 6 months, Housing First had virtually eliminated homelessness in the experimental group. It was
basically free housing, which is something that one thing that the Soviet Union did much better in America. They had free housing for everyone. So yeah, guys, this is what we need. Free housing. You just get a house no matter what. No matter your economic circumstances or anything. And not only that, taking homeless people off the street also reduces drug use and crime, which is two positives.
Massive success. That first study was in New York, and inspired by its promising results, the EU ran its own pilot programs in 5 European countries with the same outcome: secure, long-term housing stability. And now that it's become the official national policy of the Finnish government, we've seen just how much good this can achieve. It is abundantly clear that this approach works. Despite all of this, some of you might still be skeptical. Forget for a second that housing is a universal right we are all entitled to, that it is baked into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the US has signed onto and agreed to provide.
Unless you're a conservative that has a problem with that.
In front of the entire international community. Forget that this right doesn't include temporary shelters, but only real, stable housing, and that there are metrics around accessibility, affordability, discrimination, and protection from eviction which good Housing First programs conform to perfectly, in addition to affirming the basic idea of being decent to real human people. You might still wonder about costs in the wealthiest country in the world that regularly provides housing subsidies mostly to the wealthiest people in the country through mortgage interest tax deductions costing the American people, I don't know, $70 billion a year, or close to 25 times what is set aside for homelessness programs at the federal level. Imagine all that incredibly important stuff doesn't matter. It's gone, forget about it. Housing First is still cheaper than not housing people or walking them through an ineffective continuum of care program.
We've actually talked about this before. Kyle even talked about it some years ago. It costs, it would save, I think it was per person in America, if you gave them a house, put them in a free housing and such, and got them off the streets, each person would save the country budget total of like $20-something thousand a year for each person off the streets, because they're not on the streets, so no hospital worries about getting sick or something, no crime, no drug use or anything. Like, it's just nothing but positive.
Not only are people housed through Housing First covering part of the cost and are more easily employed, but housing people saves money in the long...
And and that's another thing too. Housing is also needed for, like, in terms of like getting money from jobs, because usually money goes to your address, and if you don't have a permanent address, how are you going to get your money easily if you have work?
Term on comparatively costly emergency hospitalization bills and absurdly expensive policing, which both go down
like I just
when
said.
1. People's needs are taken care of preventatively, and 2. They aren't exposed to an expensive state apparatus that has criminalized existing without a house. Given all this evidence, you're probably wondering, why aren't we doing this? To be fair, there are some small-scale examples of this in the US. The US Department of Housing and Urban Development does fund certain homelessness programs, some of them with the Housing First methods. However, these programs are only robust in a few cities and states. But no matter the nature of the program, whether it's Housing First, Continuum of Care, or something else, funding is far too low. The HUD's budget and municipal aid funds have steadily declined over time, and as a result, programs scrape together a budget from the general public and several different local and federal funds, rarely ever amounting to what they actually need to provide effective services. But the main problem behind all of this isn't that homelessness programs aren't getting enough funding. That is an issue just a little further down the line. The underlying problem is affordable housing. And at the core of that problem is our capitalist organization of the economy. Under a capitalist economy, housing isn't treated like the right it's considered to be by most nations, including,
like,
on
commodity.
paper, the United States.
Yep.
Instead,
Same with
it's
Australia.
a commodity, something to be traded, speculated on, turned for a profit. That is the main goal of housing in a commodity market. Not putting people in homes, making money. As a result, developers, investors, and the like don't focus their energy on housing the poor, from whom they can only extract so much, but rather on building luxury accommodations for the wealthy, leaving largely empty units across the country only rarely occupied, if at all, while people in desperate need of housing are refused access and subjected to a manufactured housing scarcity. On top of that, there is a very real incentive for capitalists to only partially resolve homelessness. The threat of losing the roof over your head keeps even the most exploited worker in a job they hate. Increasingly, that threat forces people into even more dire conditions as wages become less and less sufficient to cover housing costs, forcing people to take on several jobs and work untenable hours to avoid the possibility of eviction. It is not in the capitalist interest to remove that powerful, terrifying incentive. And here is where the Finnish success story may go beyond Housing First alone. Not only is Housing First doing a good job of taking people out of homelessness in a reliable way, but a social democratic organizing of the economy is limiting the extent to which people are likely to fall into it in the first place. It's still capitalism, so it still relies on somebody being exploited, in this case people in the global south, but at the very least, social democracy goes part of the way on neutering perverse capitalist incentives on continuing homelessness domestically. One key element of this is unionization. High unionization at 75% of the Finnish workforce, and therefore higher wages and higher job security than in freer markets, mean that as people exit homelessness, they are unlikely to be replaced or fall back into it themselves. American conservatives love to rail against Housing First, touting its failures to make significant changes in cities like Los Angeles, where homelessness has continued to rise despite Housing First programs taking root. What they conveniently forget to mention is that the continuum of care programs they prefer still deliver worse results. And the core issue of the skyrocketing housing prices in the free market is why people are even pushed out into homelessness in the first place. The thing is, it doesn't have to be this way. There are solutions to reduce the scale of this issue. Earlier this year, the Gravel Institute released a great video on one of these solutions, the decommodification of housing. I'll put a link to that video and all of the sources for this one in the description.
I don't know about outright decommodify it. It probably just needs to be like reformed and regulated. But there should at least be like public housing like what Finland's doing. But I don't know about outright decommodifying housing entirely.
At the end of the day, the conclusion that you should take away from the Finnish case isn't just that this one type of program works really well at taking people out of an incredibly difficult situation for the benefit of everyone. It does do that, but that's not the point. The Finnish example gives us a glimpse of how we can treat housing differently. Instead of being a game for the wealthy to gamble their own fortunes and the livelihoods of millions of Americans, Housing First shows us what housing really is: a necessity, a right. It's something that must come before almost everything else.
Yes.
Something which we must guarantee, or fail to recognize the humanity of millions of people. If you're interested in what the future of housing might look like...
So yeah, awesome video, and shows that free housing works, as we covered before too in this series. And of course, Finland, for all of you who don't know, is part of the Nordic system, which is exactly what Bernie wants. So if we had Bernie elected like he should have been, and hopefully he runs in 2024, we have a better chance of getting something like this, which is more humane and better results, especially economic. Always a win-win every single time.
And not to mention that should also be able to kick out the super rich people who are metaphorically murdering poor people with housing to make more money.
Alright, so now that we destroyed them, what video we should watch next?
Let's go to Elon Musk and Kyle Kulinski being naive.
Alright, so recently after we did the last episode, Elon Musk, that rich asshole, recently did a tweet on what he thinks would be a fair peace deal to end the Russo-Ukraine war. And he got dunked on to oblivion. Some of it well-deserved, some of it not. And Kyle covered it, and unfortunately in his video, he also was kind of very naive too. And also, yesterday on Crystal and Kyle and Friends, he actually did his own 22-minute video on how he would end the Russo-Ukraine war, the peace deal that he would do. And maybe we should watch that next time because it was kind of naive, the situation. But a good chunk of it we're going to cover. Because Kyle, just like a lot of lefties, do not understand the situation, the war we're in, and are very, very utopian fanciful about it. It's really annoying.
So the other day, there was quite a firestorm on Twitter. If I don't say so myself. Elon Musk tweeted a poll on Russia and Ukraine and basically said, hey, how's this for a potential peace deal? What do you guys think? And then the world melted down. So here, let me run through some of this for you. This is in the Daily Mail. They say Elon Musk gets into Twitter spat with Vladimir Zelensky after saying Ukraine should stay neutral in war with Russia to, quote, seek peace, as one ambassador tells him to, quote, fuck off.
Well-deserved fuck off, too. Put aside this issue, Elon Musk is a disgusting, rich piece of shit that should have all that money over $1 billion taxed to 100%. Oof! Yep. Oh, I bet you would love that one. I think
billionaires should not exist, and honestly, there are certain ones that we should just kill. Yeah, they're too rich and too evil.
But remember, didn't he have a spat recently? Didn't he have a spat recently with Bernie, and Bernie humiliated him or so? That was so funny.
Tesla CEO Musk faced a vicious backlash over his controversy.
For example, doesn't Jeff Bezos look like Lex Luthor?
Who?
Lex Luthor and Jeff Bezos.
I don't even know who that even is. Twitter.
Ukraine's ambassador to Germany, Andrzej Melnik, told the billionaire to fuck off.
You don't know who Lex Luthor is?
No.
The main arch enemy of Superman?
I don't follow that stuff, though, so of course I wouldn't know.
His thoughts on how Russia and Ukraine could reach a peace deal. He sensationally claimed that Crimea should be officially ruled a part of Russia. President Zelensky also hit back at the tech guru by posting his own poll online. Okay. And, by the way, Zelensky's poll said, which Elon Musk do you prefer? One that's pro-Russia, one that's pro-Ukraine?
The only thing he's pro is making money.
The actual posts here.
Yep.
Fuck off is my very diplomatic response to you.
Put this in episode 60
which Elon Musk do you like more? One who supports Ukraine, one who supports Russia. Let's see if they have... looking for Musk's original post. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So, here's what he said. Ukraine-Russia peace. Redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if that is will of the people. Crimea formally part of Russia, as it has been since 1783 until Khrushchev's mistake. Water supply to Crimea assured. Ukraine remains neutral. In other words, not part of NATO, not part of an alliance with Russia, just neutral. Okay? And then he said yes or no. Apparently, he responded, this is one of the things he responded to here. Russia is doing partial mobilization. They go to full war mobilization if Crimea is at risk. Death on both sides will be devastating. Russia has less than 3 times the population, more than 3 times the population of Ukraine, so victory for Ukraine is unlikely in total war. If you care about the people of Ukraine, seek peace. Let's try this then. The will of the people who live in the Donbass and Crimea should decide whether they're part of Russia or Ukraine. All right, so let's break this down specifically here. So to this point about, like, the will of the people in Donbass and Crimea, should that determine, where their allegiance lies and what country they're a part of, if they're part of any country. I think this point is a little naive, particularly because when you're going to have a quote-unquote election, it can't be at the barrel of a gun. It can't be like
what Russia did when they
I'm pointing a gun in your face, and now we're going to have a free and fair.
The 4 regions.
Yeah, and like Crimea, like you can't really have a referendum in that situation. It's just not trustable.
Election. There's nothing free or fair about that. And the other thing is, a lot of the pro-Ukraine people that were in that portion of Ukraine have now fled because there's a Russian invasion and occupation of that area. So you can't, like, invade a place, which leads to people who are sympathetic to the Ukrainian side to flee, and then say, okay, now let's have an election.
It would just be biased in your favor.
Yep, exactly.
People would fear genuine, reprisal.
Don't forget killing a lot of them.
If you did have a vote, and then a bunch of people voted for Ukraine, they'd probably fear, like, if people found out I voted on the Ukrainian side, am I going to get killed by a Russian soldier, right? So, I don't think that's reasonable at this point, right? Maybe there was a time in the past where you could make a theoretical argument in that direction, but I don't think that's reasonable at this point in time. And also, by the way, the numbers of that so-called election were comical. I always say this, look, if you want to fake an election and you're an authoritarian leader, for the love of God, go with, like, 56%. Why are you going with fucking 98% in this area? And the low number was 87% one of the years. Like, who are you fucking kidding? So that's one point. Now, my overall thoughts on this, though, are actually kind of complicated, because here's the deal. One of the main concerns that I have, and that I think many people have looking at this, is, like, you don't want to do genuine appeasement Neville Chamberlain style, where, like, you make some sort of a peace deal, and then Putin just rips it up and goes and takes another non-NATO aligned territory to expand his sphere of influence and expand, resurrect what he wants to do, which is the Russian Empire, right?
Into Moldova
so you would feel
Georgia.
dumb, historically, if it was a World War II-like situation where Neville Chamberlain was, he was shaking the peace deal, the piece of paper in his hand that he just made with Hitler, and he's like, we will have peace in our time, and it's like, turns out that motherfucker was unappeasable, and you got played for a fool, right?
But that's the thing, though, Kyle. That's the situation Putin is, too.
Putin.
You can't trust Putin just like you can't trust Hitler. Like,
Yep.
here's a reality situation. If this peace deal went exactly how it is, Russia would get, like, pretty much everything they wanted. Like they would officially have Crimea. Ukraine would officially renounce control of it. Water rights would be there. Ukraine would be neutral. Two of those things. The one thing, the water, that was ensured when they invaded and they broke the dam to get water access. The other one, Ukraine effectively was neutral because they weren't able to join NATO because of the current war on Donbass the previous 8 years and the territorial disputes with Donbass and Crimea. So they literally couldn't join NATO because of those reasons, which makes it even stupider that why Russia invaded them. But all this is just going to get what they want, and Ukraine gets nothing. They get nothing out of it.
And then Russia will just rearm and invade to take the rest of Ukraine and then go on into Moldova and Georgia. Because that's the thing. Like, Ukraine is protecting Moldova and Georgia.
Like, this... I don't want to accuse these people of being appeasers like Vosh and other idiots like them do, but this is given exactly what Russia wants. And just like before, Russia already got what they wanted by invading Crimea, taking over, and they didn't really face much consequences. There is nothing that's going to stop Putin until he's completely defeated and overthrown. That's the end of it.
Right? Now, having said that, that is a genuine concern, for real. It is. But the other part of the equation is like, what if it's not like World War II?
It is, though, Kyle.
What if it's not like World War
Kyle.
II? What if you make some sort of a peace deal
You're
and the
being
peace
way
actually
too
sticks?
optimistic about it.
Well, then that's a different conversation. Now, you still create a bad precedent, right? Because the precedent is a big country can invade a smaller country, make demands, and then you meet like 30% of their demands.
No, this would be pretty much almost 100% of what Russia wants.
That would be 100%,
Like,
yeah.
the only
And
thing...
that, you know what that would do? China would look at that and look at Taiwan and say, mine.
That's what I was going to bring up earlier. Like, the only things Russia would not get in this situation is Ukraine under their thumb, both either annexed or like a puppet of some sorts, but they largely would get, like, everything they would want, though. But yeah, that's another thing, too, about this peace deal. Like, if you do this, this would make it more likely for China to maybe consider maybe nuclear threats of invasion will work enough to maybe get Taiwan under our thumb. And by the way, speaking of Elon Musk, also recently, he also considered a peaceful solution with Taiwan, China, involving Taiwan basically becoming Hong Kong. Like a special territory.
Yeah, pretty much. You see where it's there.
Did you see what just happened to Hong Kong like 3 years ago? Why would Taiwan want to do that? And also, funny enough too, after he announced that possibility, idea, guess what happened?
What?
China gave him a massive tax credit. So yeah, more proof that Musk doesn't care about this. All he cares about is money.
Yeah. And also remember, actually that did remind me that indirectly, Ukraine is actually protecting Taiwan.
Yep.
Because China's got a similar mindset.
Yeah.
So most of the stuff they're doing there's through Belt and Road instead of hard imperialism like Russia, though we know that they would like to do hard imperialism on Taiwan.
But because of both Ukraine beating the shit out of Russia, and of course, unlike Ukraine, America's ally with Taiwan, thankfully, we've scared them away for it for at least right now. Hopefully that stays the case.
For at least the next 5 years.
And hopefully Ukraine beats Russia so badly that it will hopefully permanently scare China not to do anything.
And they walk away going, rad, that worked out. So now you just laid the precedent of any larger country can invade any smaller country and go in and make demands, and then they're going to get some percentage of their demands. That's a terrible precedent to set. But then on the flip side of that, if we don't go down the path of some semblance of some kind of peace process and peace deal, what is the alternative? The alternative is either endless conventional war for 5 years, 10 years, whatever the
I don't think this war is going to last 5 years, let alone 10 years, Kyle. That's where you're being way, way too pessimistic.
Yeah.
It's going to end a lot sooner than then. But here's the thing. If it is going to last 5 to 10 years, then so be it. Until one side completely gives up, the war's not going to end. You have to accept that reality.
Where tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people die.
All Russia's fault.
Wasted. Or, beyond that, and we're having this conversation already, Vladimir Putin decides, I'm going to cut this off right now, and he uses a quote-unquote tactical nuclear weapon. So...
Well, here's the thing, though, Kyle.
Find the fuck out if he does.
Well, here's the thing, though, Kyle. If he actually does drop any sort of nuke whatsoever, at best, he's going to face, like, complete economic destruction of Russia. Like, Russia will face an even worse economic catastrophe than what happened with the Soviet Union when it collapsed. Because, guys, I mentioned before, like, in 2 years after the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia's economy collapsed by, like, 50%. They had worse economic outcome than America and Germany did during the Great Depression. Like, the whole economy just died. It was like a national traumatic event, which unfortunately helped Putin rise. So, that's the best case scenario. Worst case, they're going to either have America and NATO join the war in World War III to crush them, and then maybe it'll lead to a nuclear war. So, here's the reality situation. No matter what, he loses. Either he loses because Ukraine kicks him out, or he loses because the West will destroy him in conventional war, or he launches nukes and then he'll fucking die. Like, no matter what, he loses. And guess what? He must lose. No matter what. He has to lose. And preferably, he does need to eventually just die. Because the world is not going to be a better place until he is just dead.
Yep,
Here,
whether
let me
he
show you this.
either dies of whatever's wrong with him, or he gets assassinated.
Because remember, he just turned 70 recently, so that's
Yep.
up there in age for Russian men. So hopefully natural age, natural progress will just eventually snuff him out. Because until he's gone, the world is not gonna be safe, and the war will not really end peacefully until he eventually just goes.
This is in the Telegraph, but this was reported in a number of different places. Nuclear weapons convoy spotted in central Russia sparks fears Putin could be preparing test to send signal to the West. So, this is what we've been dealing with. He's been making overt nuclear threats over and over and over. And
I mean, to be fair, Kyle, too, he's also been making threats from the very start, and has he done any of it? No. Like, hell, Ukraine has bombed Crimea, and not only Crimea, they've done attacks in Belgorod and other Russian cities. Has anything happened? No. Like, it might just be straight up just a bluff. And if it is a bluff, then we have to exploit it to make sure that he knows that we're not scared of that. And also, shit, I forgot what I was gonna say now, damn it.
I don't know what the percentage likelihood is that he would actually do it, but I don't want to fucking find out, dog. I don't want to find out.
And still, every single time I read about this on Kiev Independent and other YouTube sites and such, that American intelligence keeps saying they're not considering it yet, so maybe you should take their word on for right now.
So,
like guys, we mentioned too in the last episode, America and the West have their eyes on all of Russia's areas where they have nuclear weapons to a T. If they know they're about to do something, we're gonna find out way, way, way before they even do it. It's not gonna be like instantly out of nowhere. It's gonna be like sometime before we know for sure.
Really, look, the reality is there are no good answers here.
Actually, Kyle, there is a good answer. Russia completely surrenders, just like that, and leaves Ukraine, including Crimea, and the war's over, just like that. That is a good answer.
And that's the part that pretty much nobody is acknowledging, that there are no good answers. There's no way out of this where, it's a victory. There's only bad and less bad answers.
Well, there is a victory for Ukraine. Like I said, there is literally no way Putin is going to win this. Even if he got all the way one, including like to annexing Crimea, all of Ukraine, or force a puppet on.
Even if he took Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, he's not going to be able to hold on to them at this point.
If he even took over all of Ukraine somehow, the economic sanctions are still going to be there. If anything, they might even become stronger. And then if he even did try to do something on Moldova and Georgia, that might just say, fuck it, push the West to finally join, even if they're not part of NATO. So, like, no matter what, he loses. And we got to make sure he doesn't win ever.
Moldova, prior to 2022, didn't really have a standing army. But they do now.
Of course, will it be enough
because we saw on with Lukashenko's board, there was one set of arrows through to Moldova, and there was actually a second version came out a couple of days later that showed a second set of arrows off screen. It went off screen, and people actually traced that once Moldova that they were going to swing around from Moldova and strike Georgia.
Answers, and we don't know which is
the same thing
one, which is the less bad
with Ukraine.
That one.
They did it with
because no peace process, no peace deal means
Ukraine,
endless fighting, 5 years, 10 years more.
Transnistria in Moldova, and they'll do it, and they'll do it with South Ossetia with Georgia.
Bad and less bad answers, and we don't know which is the bad one and which is the less bad one. Because no peace process, no peace deal means endless fighting, 5 years, 10 years more, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people dead, all to eventually, at some point, everybody gets war-tired and then says, yeah, maybe we'll make some kind of peace deal.
But Ukraine does not want to give up. Here's another thing, too, that Kyle and others don't seem to get. Russia and Ukraine, neither side wants a peace deal. Ukraine does not want a peace out because they don't want to give up anything, especially since, remember, they're on the offensive now. They're winning at the moment. So why should they give up anything when they're winning? That's dumb.
Exactly.
And Russia is not going to give up anything because they feel like they're not getting enough for what they've put into it. And that's going to be even less as the war continues to drag on. So neither side is going to surrender. Give up anytime soon. At this point in the war, it is a total war. The peace will not happen until one side is completely destroyed. That's the end of it, and you gotta accept it.
Or nuclear war, World War III. That is definitely a potential thing. Or you have some sort of peace process, and you're rolling the dice on whether or not this leader, this authoritarian, will actually abide by it, or if he's.
But
gonna
that's the thing, though, Kyle. He's
say,
not, though. You're being way too optimistic about that. I don't think he's going to accept it whatsoever.
Hey, I got some of what I wanted, so now let me invade other places.
Yeah, that's what he would do. If he does get what he wants, I wouldn't be surprised if he invaded Ukraine again or did something else until he loses so badly that Russia is permanently pacified like Germany and Japan were at the end of World War II, or he dies. We're in a situation that Russia is just warmongering until something fundamentally in that country changes. And this peace deal you have is not going to change it.
Crystal makes the point. I think this is a fair point. It's not like this has gone good for Russia, right?
Well, yeah, this war has been nothing but failure for Russia. But that's the problem, though. Putin and the Russian, the main people in Russia, they, just like historically do, they don't care about how much the country's people are suffering. They have a sense of mission. The mission of remaking Russia as an empire means more to them than making Russia economically better off and their people better off. The sense of mission is too much for them. They can't let go of that. And that's why Russia has to be permanently pacified till, just like Germany and Japan, they wouldn't give up their militaristic culture until we beat them so badly that we forced them to give it up. They have to be forced to give it up. And giving them this victory will enforce it and make them try to do more stupid things.
The economy took a big hit. There's dissent from within the ranks of, Putin's inner circle. They're drafting 300,000 people. 200,000 at least have fled the country, probably more. People don't want to fight on the front lines. So it's it has gone terribly. So maybe that alone is a disincentive where
he doesn't care.
I don't want to fucking do this again. So if you make a peace deal, it might actually stick. But again, you don't know because it values expanding the territory.
Like Hitler in Japan, even when they were getting beaten to oblivion, they wouldn't stop until, when Germany's case, fully occupied in Japan, were forced to surrender when the Soviets invaded and the nukes were dropped on them. You have to beat them so badly that they're forced to give up.
More than he values the current economic situation and the well-being of his people, then he could just say, fuck it, I don't care, I'm going to continue.
Yeah, that is what he's going to do. He's going to continue no matter what. Kyle, we've made it abundantly clear, months before Russia invaded Ukraine, that if Putin does this, Russia's going to face severe economic pain for this. And yet he still did it. Shouldn't it be obvious evidence to you that he just doesn't care and nothing other than complete defeat will stop him?
I don't know what the answer is. Look, I don't actually blame Elon Musk for dabbling in this idea and putting out a potential peace agreement. I just think that part of what he lists here is kind of naive and silly, right?
Well, your list too is naive and silly too, Kyle. And Musk only cares about money. Come on, that's the only reason. I wouldn't be surprised if we found very soon, just like what happened with him with China when he did his thing with Taiwan, that Russia gave him some sort of financial benefit to proposing this.
Everybody who was dogpiling him and roasting him and just being you're a fucking idiot and all this stuff, or
he is an idiot. You
Russia,
even made fun of him, Kyle.
I think that's a little too far. I think it's a little silly. I do think a conversation about a peace agreement is reasonable. I just think it needs to be maybe a less silly and naive peace agreement. Redo the election in the Donbass. What are you talking about? So anyway,
or you can be a realist like us and realize that there will be no peace anytime soon until one side is completely defeated.
As you can tell,
so it's a waste of time to even think about it. Especially when neither side wants to surrender anytime soon.
My thoughts are all over the map on this because I used to believe, hey man, I do think it's probably the main reason Putin's doing this is because of NATO expansion and he felt like Russia was under threat and all that stuff. I used to believe that. But then as time has gone on and I've listened to things Vladimir Putin himself has said, now I don't have that perspective. I have the perspective that I never would have expanded NATO in the first place because I don't want to give him an excuse to do something like this.
That is one thing we actually agree on for once.
He's basically trying to rebuild the Russian Empire and that he doesn't think Ukraine is a real country and stuff like that. Then I look at that and I go, oh, well, he was going to do this anyway, regardless of what the West did. So if he's going to do it anyway, then that means he's sort of unappeasable in a sense, right?
Yeah, Kyle, exactly. He is unappeasable. So why give him what he wants? Here's the reality situation. Best case for Russia, unless they like somehow forces it, here's an ideal actual peace deal that would make the world a lot better place. Ukraine, Russia leaves all of Ukraine, and that includes Donetsk, Luhansk, and Crimea, and Russia gets nothing. At most, they would get sanction relief. Putin would be able to stay in power. Maybe they won't have to pay any war reparations if that would get them to completely give up. But that's it. That's the only fair peace deal in this situation. Russia gets nothing, and Ukraine gets everything they want back. And since they're winning right now, maybe they could indeed get that back.
And so if he's unappeasable, what good is a peace deal? Because he can just fucking ignore it. So, I don't know. I don't have the answers. My final point I'll make is this. You will, at some point, need to do a peace deal. Because, again, I think the alternative is worse. The alternative is extended war.
That's just not going to happen anytime soon,
potentially nuclear war.
Absolutely
potentially
not.
World War III.
He actually said, Zelensky actually said, he will only do a peace deal once Putin's gone.
Yeah, like that's the reality situation. Putin is just such an evil man that the world and Europe is not safe until he just goes.
You have to try the peaceful route. Now, if the peaceful route doesn't work,
it wouldn't work.
At least we could say we tried, right?
Why say we tried when it's not going to work? He's going to win. Like, Kyle, he's going to get everything he wants here. Why give him what he wants and he'll come back for more? How about he fucking loses and he gets nothing, and then he either dies or he goes away?
At least we can say, look, we did everything we could, and he made crystal clear, I ain't interested at all. So
he isn't interested.
That's my take
He's
on
not
it.
interested in peacing out either.
I would reluctantly, with eyes wide open about the potential fallout here, do a peace deal and let the chips fall where they may. Hey.
Alright, that video was kind of annoying. Now, of course, before I say what you gotta think about this, like we said, Kyle just recently did a video on what his actual peace deal would be, and we'll cover it next time out because he goes way more into detail on it. But yeah, what do you guys say about Elon and Kyle's naive about this?
They just don't get it. That's the problem. They just don't get. Putin is a fascist dictator. He will not stop. He's got genocide on his mind. He thinks all Ukrainians are Nazis, and therefore genocide is awesome. By the way, that's what people like losers like Jacob Hickey believe as well.
Yeah. Like, the only thing I could think of is maybe Kyle and all these people are probably just... Like, this was much more of a case. I would actually be more, like, inclined to agree with him before the war happened. That they're probably just too scared of, like, World War III or nuclear annihilation to, like, think properly. Because, likewise, I would actually agree with we even probably would agree with a good chunk of these before the war happened. Like, we even said before, Ukraine would eventually probably have to give up Crimea because there's no way they're going to beat Russia in a war, and we're not going to start World War III for them to get it back. But the situation's changed now. Now they are at war, and they are winning. So, if they want Crimea back, and if they can fight for it and get it back successfully, then good luck with them in that regard, and hope they get it back. But yeah, you got, like, even with the nuclear weapons, the ball's in Putin's court. If he does it, he's dead, no matter what. And you hope, and Russia would be permanently destroyed. You gotta hope that he would be reasonable enough and rational enough to realize that he's never going to win if he ever does that. So, you just gotta hope he doesn't do that. Because we're not going to launch nuclear weapons unless they launch them at us. That's the reality situation. Alright, so now, on to the next topic.
That will be Biden's weed pardons.
This is actually good. Recently, Biden actually did, just like we keep covering like the last few weeks, Biden keeps doing awesome thing after awesome thing. Now he did another awesome thing. He just pardoned a shit ton of people with marijuana felonies and stuff. Which is awesome. And he also not only encouraged states to do this to their state, like, criminals, but he also encouraged whoever administration deals with, like, illegal drugs to reconsider reclassifying marijuana so it's not illegal anymore. Or at least decriminalized nationwide. Which would be awesome. as weed should be legal. Not just the weed, all drugs. But let's see the video.
Oh my goodness, I sat down to shoot a completely different video. Looked online to see if there were any updates to that story. I'm still going to shoot that video later. Only to find out that Joe Biden is making a massive move on cannabis. So let me get to this news. This is just breaking. He put this online through Twitter, starting with this saying, "I've said before, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. Today, I'm taking steps to end our failed approach."
By the way, your failed approach, Biden, since you put them in jail with the crime bill in the 90s.
Yep, as part of the 1994 Ensler persecution bill.
Which, you still are not going to be forgetting about that. That was a horrible thing, but hey, at least you're making somewhat amends for it.
Allow me to lay them out. And there are, I believe, 3 different steps here. So he first says, "I'm pardoning all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession. There are thousands of people who were previously convicted of simple possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result."
And this is also a problem. We even covered about this with like black crime before. Since most of the people that have drug crimes, are arrested for drug possession stuff are black, it's very difficult for people to get any housing or employment if they have a criminal record, which then leads to an endless cycle of endless crime, as we covered before. That's why I've even said before, you should not be denied employment or housing for crimes unless you want to change the economic structure where money's no longer important, which would be awesome. Yeah. But if you're going to keep it there, then you have to have even criminals have a way to make money, or else it's just going to be an endless spiral. And this is one of these instances right here where it was an endless spiral.
My pardon will remove this burden. Already, this alone is incredible. A fantastic move, not only politically, because of course this is incredibly popular.
Only thing I'll say is just marijuana possession. It should be also just using drugs too.
But also,
need to go farther.
Obviously, for those that will be impacted by this. Think of how crazy it is. How long we have gone knowing that marijuana is not a big deal. Yet, it has continued to impact the lives of people that have been caught having some on them. Be it through, as Biden mentions, employment, housing, educational opportunities. It is completely insane. So to finally see a president step up, use their power, and do something about it is honestly surprising. It's surprising because you're not used to seeing some actual progress like this. But here, Biden is actually doing it. Did not expect him to make a move on this, especially before the midterms. Normally, the way these politicians think, they think doing anything
any moment before conservatives stop saying "Let's go, Brandon,"
may hurt them. Especially Democrats think that.
Well, they don't really mean kill go,
before the
Brandon.
midterms. Hopefully, or I assume there are people in his ear that are showing him, the polling, the reality of how popular this is, and that I believe would.
If anything, I think it's going to be the exact opposite, because a lot of his administration so far, when he does awesome things, they keep telling him that it's not a good idea. I think it's the exact opposite, that they're telling him not to do this, and he's basically telling him now to fuck off, which, hey, you know what, would be the right thing, because we saw the polls. We even covered them, I think, a few episodes ago. He's almost back up to 50% again, because he's doing awesome things. So, how about Biden should go tell them fuckers to go fuck off, my approval rating's going up, and I'm going to do what helps me get better polling.
Move him.
To get my friends back into Congress and retain a majority.
So he goes on here saying, second, I'm calling on governors to pardon simple state
even if
marijuana
Manchin and Cinema decide to become Republicans, we'll still have a majority.
Second, I'm calling on governors to pardon simple state marijuana possession offenses, which unfortunately he has no power over.
Prison solely for possessing marijuana. No one should be in a local jail or state prison.
So we know that certain red states will probably be like, just go into the jails and kill everyone.
But there's more. So he also says, third, we classify marijuana at the same level as heroin and more serious than fentanyl. It makes no sense. I'm asking Secretary Becerra and the Attorney General to initiate the process of reviewing how marijuana is scheduled under federal law.
Yeah, marijuana right now, I can't remember the exact classification off the top of my head, but it's viewed as bad of a drugs as harder drugs than weed. So therefore, it's illegal. Not only is it illegal, you can't even talk about like the medical benefits that weed has, which is we covered before. So he's saying that they should reclassify it. So maybe it would decriminalize it. Maybe allow like medical work on it to see how medical
marijuana stuff would put it in line with Australia, where only the ACT has fully decriminalized weed, but it's medical marijuana is legal nationwide.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of states in the country where weed, recreational or medical, is still illegal. There are a lot more states that have it medically legal, like mine. Hopefully in November we have weed legalization bill up to vote on, which can't wait for that to hopefully get involved with. But there are a lot of states in the country that still have it illegal. This needs to... And of course, here's the thing. Even if all the states did legalize it in some form, it would still be illegal on the federal government. And federal overrides state law, so if the federal government wanted to crack down states that want to have legal weed, they are allowed to do that. So that's why we need to do it federally, too.
So I have discussed this at length, how marijuana is still a Schedule I drug, just completely insane. Finally, Biden is doing something about this through executive order, through his executive powers. He can do this alone. He does not need Congress. He needs Congress to legalize it, but he doesn't need Congress to remove it from a Schedule I drug. So, of course, this is just the announcement of them looking into this, but assuming this continues, it appears he's going to take it out of a Schedule I drug. I'm speechless because I just did not. If you told me when Biden won and became president that he would do something like this, something this popular, something that should be done, that is the right thing to do, I would not believe you. But it is really good to see this. And he actually goes on, I might as well read his other two tweets. It says here, I'd also like to note that as federal and state regulations change, we still need important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales of marijuana. And also says here, sending people to jail for possessing marijuana has upended too many lives for conduct that is legal in many states. That's before you address the clear...
Which is your fault too, Brian, remember.
Prosecution and conviction. Today we begin to write these laws.
But you started because of your racism.
It is, I'm looking forward to seeing how the right reacts to this. Because again...
I was actually debating if I should cover... I actually was going to debate on if I should cover this or Kyle'sville, but this one was shorter compared to Kyle's. But Kyle did a video... Actually, I think Dole also did a video on this, covering both the left and right's responses. And the right, of course, were malding like crazy. No surprise. Although there were some Republicans that actually praised Biden for doing this. And they were on Fox, and the Fox News hosts were having a meltdown here to praise the Biden for that. And there was this one idiot on Fox News that Kyle covered recently that acted like this is going to be the destruction of America, what Biden's doing.
Yep.
Yeah, guys, America's going to be destroyed because Biden pardoned marijuana possession, encouraged states to do so, and to change the legislation about weed. Yeah. America's going to be completely destroyed about that. Fucking
this
idiots.
This is very popular, as I will show you, a very popular position. I have to assume their only reaction to this will be, Biden wants to release criminals. That's
one thing they've said.
He's going to release criminals. He wants to release criminals.
Yes, because it's one of their NPC talking points.
Vocally, against marijuana and how dangerous cannabis is, because again, a lot of their own voters use cannabis, are fine, want to see legalization. So I don't think strategically that is the proper route for the right to take. So they're gonna, do some bullshit around, crime. That's, I'm sure, the angle they're going to use, but
and culture war crap.
Work.
Yeah,
as I've covered.
People see through this garbage. A lot of people know somebody who has been impacted by just simple marijuana possession. A lot of people, again, use cannabis on a regular basis, or know someone that does, and they know those people aren't, out of their minds. So it's a very normalized thing. So for anyone to freak out about this, they're just being dishonest. Last thing here, the polling on all this. So Americans overwhelmingly say marijuana should be legal for recreational or medical use. So first of all, a net 91 saying it should be legal for both medical and or recreational use. And those that's safe for medical and recreational use, it's at 60%. So
91% of Americans think marijuana should be legal at all. Medical and recreational combined. Just think about that, guys. 91% of Americans think weed should be legal in some reform. Only 10%, no, 9%, no, 8% actually. 8% of Americans think it should be illegal still. Why the fuck would both parties not instantly concede on this? Like, almost everyone agrees with this. You just shut the fuck up and you just support it. End of discussion.
majority support. And by
But
the way,
no,
if you research,
half one party still is fervently against it. The other one doesn't want to do anything about it because a lot of them are still taking money from alcohol industry, and they would be massively hurt by weed being legal.
look at Gallup polling,
Yep, they're
very
taking
similar
money
numbers.
from big
The support
alcohol
for
and
marijuana
big
legalization
drunk.
has been increasing for years now, a very popular position. So, of course, the politics of this great move. Also worth mentioning, Canada legalized cannabis a few years ago, and everything's the same. Like, people didn't go crazy. There isn't, a whole new slew of car accidents or anything dumb. No,
Steven Crowder would make the difference on that one. Remember, it was on Joe Rogan.
I remember that.
That like one time where Joe Rogan destroyed him too, which was awesome.
Yes.
And of course, may I need to remind you all about Portugal. Back almost 20 years ago, legalized all drugs, and crime has gone down in Portugal since. And that's the policy that we want. We want drugs all legal, not just weed.
Using cannabis before it became legalized at the federal level. So nothing really changed, except now people can go to the store and get it. That's, the only difference here. So, of course, all the fear-mongering beforehand, if you legalize it, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And then, there's a lot of fear-mongering around, kids are going to get it. Kids were getting it easier when it wasn't legal. Now that it's legalized and controlled, it's a lot tougher for it to get into the hands of people that shouldn't have it. But
Exactly.
again, logic often does not work. And people who just have an emotional attachment to certain positions. But anyways, really good to see Biden do this, and wow, the impact this will have on millions of lives cannot be understated. And I also am looking forward to seeing how this may impact Democrats and Biden's own numbers.
Yep, absolutely awesome. And of course, this has been a little bit since we it's only been like a few days, I think, since this happened. Actually, it's been 11 days, so maybe the polls have gone up recently, but I haven't seen any changes. Last time I checked, it was almost 50%. But anyway, we gotta see about this awesome thing.
That is awesome, and hopefully it leads to more good things. Dark Brandon continues to rise.
Yep, and he needs to just keep doing it. Don't listen to the advisors. They're going to always tell you to do the right-wing things. Don't listen to them. And all the conservatives can keep malding. Speaking of malding, we're going to be coming up to some malding. If anything, that might be the next thing we cover.
Over Velma being LGBT.
So anyways, guys, this is actually going to be a very interesting thing to talk about. So, recently, Velma from Scooby-Doo has a new series spin-off based upon herself, I think it was, and it's revealed that she is gay. Something that's been like ambiguous throughout the series' 50+ years in this of existence. If you've noticed, I don't follow Scooby-Doo a lot, but I still know quite a bit about it because I've seen like all the original shows. I saw like the '90s movies and all that, so I know a little bit about this. Velma has been pretty much ambiguous sexuality lies. Like, it's not like overt like it is with Daphne and Fred, if you've noticed. Where I always thought maybe like Velma being with Shaggy, or maybe a woman. Like it really was ambiguous, like I said.
Yeah, though that's like it kind of like not just for Velma. It's gonna sound weird, kind of for Shaggy too.
I never noticed the ambiguous with Shaggy. Have you ever seen Alien Invasion, where he falls in love with that alien woman?
No.
Yeah,
I might do it.
Yeah, because in one of the movies that came out from 1998 to 2001, he actually fell in love with a hippie woman that turned out to be an alien.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, there's even a song about.
He's a stoner, so that would understand.
And of course, it also was kind of implied too. Velma was gay. Like the original plot. Do you know the Scooby-Doo movie, the live-action Scooby-Doo movie that came out in 2002?
Yes.
Originally, the original idea when they were first planning out, it was going to be like more like an R-rated movie. And one of the plots, from what I remember, was that Velma and Daphne were supposedly gay and with each other. Fred was a gangbanger and Shaggy was indeed a stoner.
Did you figured out overall out of all of them that who was it? That Velma is only into girls. Daphne and possibly Fred swing both ways.
I always view it as they're with each other. Since you said you've never seen like the 98 to 2001 movies, right?
Nope.
Because
the first movie I saw was the one where Scrappy with the islands and Scrappy and growing himself.
Yeah,
massively.
that was the first live action movie, because the movies came out in 1998 to 2001. The first one, Zombie Island. Fred was very jealous of Daphne talking with some man who was a cop in the movie, and then I think there was a later on movie where Fred was talking with some other woman. Daphne got very jealous, and I remember, and I know there's one part in one of the movies where Daphne was hardcore like flirting on Fred, like almost pushed him to like a wall, if I remember correctly, and flirting with him.
Oh Lord, that's a little.
But yeah,
a little much.
So yeah, Velma has been ambiguous sexuality-wise, to the point where even I, like as a kid growing up, noticed it. So, they've just pretty much announced that she's gay, and as always, conservatives are malding about it. So, let's watch their mauld. As always.
The existence of gay people is a hate crime against them, according to them. It's political and problematic. If there's two genders, male and political. Two races, white and political. Two sexualities, straight and political. And two gender identities, cis and political.
Our beloved Scooby-Doo has gone woke. Velma has come out as LGBTQ. I'm guessing she's the L.
Breaking news. Velma from Scooby-Doo is not straight. This is a problem, apparently, for the right.
Now, I actually would agree somewhat with this if it was made clear throughout the entire series that Velma was straight, and then they all of a sudden made her gay. Like, I actually agree with the right somewhat. I don't like when they change, like, characters, like, personalities, sexualities, race, and all that, when it's been, like, pretty much codified into the lore of a series. Like, if they did this with, like, Daphne, for example.
One thing I'd add on there is if they do that, treat it like a reboot. Have it as, like, a reboot thing.
I'd rather them just make a whole new character if they want to bring, like, more representation in the series. But, like, if they made Daphne gay, even though I've made, like, abundantly clear, like, the lore pretty much has her with Fred, that I would actually have a problem with, because that goes against her entire lore. But Velma is ambiguous. So this one is not really that big of a deal to me, because it could have gone either way. And also, we're going to get to a little bit later on, it seems they actually did retooled Velma from the...
I remember hearing and reading a bit about that. That originally Velma was going to be only into girls.
No, that she was actually bi, and that's why she was ambiguous. But now they've made her gay, which, if that's true, I mean, bisexuality is on a spectrum, because there are bisexuals that literally can go either way. There's some are more towards heterosexual or homosexual. But I'm not even exactly sure I would like that. Oh, now you're gay when you were bi. This seems a little not really that good either.
Oh, weird, but it's like
it's not as big. It's not that big of a deal. It's definitely not a big deal to mauld over.
It's more like it's like it's a little weird, but like I mean, okay.
Maybe
and then they're like, this is the end of Western civilization.
Maybe it would have been better if they made it clear that she was bi, because that's what the lore makes it sound like she was. And like I said, I've noticed it throughout the series as a kid, watch it, that Velma was ambiguous.
Depending on the series, like one time she seems to lean more girls. Another series, she seems to have some interest in Shaggy.
Yeah, that's why I've noticed too. Like I always thought her and Shaggy being together, and there's a lot of times I also noticed like she seems pretty like not interested in like anyone.
I had quite the reaction to Velma, who for years they had these crushes. They really thought they could get with her, but now their hearts are collectively broken.
I hate when they always keep bringing this up. I don't think they really have like a sexual preference like Velma. I just think they just don't like it that gays are being represented in media. Like I think that's all it is to it.
as she's apparently into women. How sad. So
Yeah,
this
boo-hoo.
from IndieWire here, Velma is officially queer in Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo animated film. 2 decades after James Gunn's live-action films and animated series Mystery Incorporated sought to show Velma as gay, which, by the way, I did some reading. She apparently was, a lesbian 20 years ago. But
Well, like I said, that was the original plot idea for the live-action 2002 movie that never happened.
the studio at the time down
They left them more
played that in
ambiguous,
the script. So they
like
forced
particular, like it may entirely be possible that, that the only that she's like 99.8% into girls, and like the only guy on the entire planet that she has any interest in is Shaggy.
That reminds me too. That also reminds me, in the second movie of the series, I can't remember what it was called. It came out in 1999. One of the main antagonists in that movie was a man that Velma did have attraction to throughout most of the film until he revealed himself to be the main villain of the movie. So yeah, that actually does confirm to me more that she definitely is indeed bi. I can't believe I forgot about that till just now.
changes to the script so that she wasn't. But anyways, saying the new Halloween film makes Velma's sexuality not a mystery anymore. Oh, who cares?
Yeah,
But,
largely who
add
cares.
this to,
Yeah.
I would have a problem if this was like Daphne or someone who was definitely straight and they made her gay, but Velma ambiguous, so who cares really at that point?
Yep.
Dr. Seuss books, adds to Mr. Potato Head, all these non-stories. I mean, just to quickly on those two issues. The Dr. Seuss books, the ones that were canceled or taken off shelves, that was decided by the actual Dr. Seuss company.
Which I actually didn't really agree with. I don't like that they took those books down, but hey, it is capitalism. It is their choice in the end if they want to do so, even though I don't really like that idea.
These were books that no one even read
Weird.
anymore.
Like,
they were really
it's
they
not
had,
like, oh my
racist,
god, it's the end of the world.
aspects to them. That's why they were taken off. Again, the company decided that. They weren't canceled externally and then forced down. No, the company out of nowhere thought, hey, these are bad, let's take them down. And then on Mr. Potato Head, they just changed.
Yeah, Mr. Potato we covered. All they did was just change the name of the brand. The brand was called Mr. Potato Head. Now they call it Potato Head, but Mr. Potato Head still exists and all that. Like, they didn't get rid of the character or do anything like that. All they did was just change the name of the brand. That was definitely a stupid thing to complain about.
Changed the overall title to Potato Head. There is still Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, but there is.
By the way, I just posted in the chat the song where Shaggy does a song about how he fell in love with that woman in Alien Invasion, if you want to check that later on.
They're under the Potato
I'll
Head
check
label.
that out
So
once
both of
this
those
video is
complete
over.
stories. Here's another one. Velma. Velma is a lesbian. Who gives a shit? But apparently people do. So first, let's start with Eric Bowling. Eric Bowling on Newsmax. Here's his take on Velma.
Oh, did you see that? Our beloved Scooby-Doo has gone woke. Velma has come out.
Everything
as
is woke to you idiots.
LGBTQ. I'm guessing she's the
Yep,
L,
exactly.
but she may
Everything
be
is
the B. I don't
woke.
know. Perhaps the T.
Basically,
Maybe she's
everything
gonna
is
do
awesome,
the
but replace
whole
awesome with
time,
woke.
right? I'm not sure. Maybe it's the Q. Truth be told, I can't really tell the difference between most of the letters. It always confuses me, by the way, folks, when a man decides he's a woman, becomes a woman, then sleeps with women. I mean, why don't you say a man?
I'm just going to pause there for a second. It's really not that confusing. There is gender identity and then sexual orientation.
Yeah, they're split.
Exactly.
They're not
Yep.
the same thing. Gender is
Of
a social
of course, these
construct.
people have such a low IQ that they can't tell the difference.
Yep.
How you identify is different than who you are attracted to. Not all that complicated. It's okay to be a little confused, but once it's explained, it should be pretty easy to understand. But anyways, let's continue these comments.
Sorry, don't hate on me, liberals and lefties. I don't hate y'all. I just don't fully understand the different categories. But you do you.
Gender is a social construct. It's not the same as sex. There you go. Is that so hard to understand? That seems easy.
But do we really
Apparently
need
it
our
is.
kids
Well, it is
exposed
if
to
you have the
Scooby-Doo?
IQ. If you have the IQ of in room temperature in Celsius.
A kid's cartoon, again, adults, no issue with what you want to be, but kids and cartoons geared straight at kids, no gracias.
No, you would have a problem if this was geared towards adults. Like, come on, you just don't like gays being represented in media, even if it was for adults. Like, don't lie to us.
By the way, Velma.
Again, same line. Male and political. White and political. Straight and political. Cis and political.
Oma, she's gay now? Don't worry to my straight male friends. Daphne, she's still straight as far as we can see.
Yeah, because it was canonically shown throughout the series, especially the movies I mentioned, that Daphne and Fred are pretty much almost a couple. Like, and they've gotten jealous at each other multiple times when they talk to someone of the opposite sex.
And as far as I can see, by the way, HBO.
Speaking of which, I'm actually looking for a scene on YouTube to show you Fred getting jealous at Daphne in Zombie Island at the moment too.
You gotta show both of them.
I'm looking.
if Velma is lesbian, I can see Fred being gay. I don't know, Scooby. What do you think, Fred? Is he gay?
Fred, no. Scooby is straight based upon the movies because remember I mentioned the alien invasion. Shaggy fell in love with an alien woman.
Yep.
Well, that alien had an alien dog with her that Scooby fell in love with.
All right. I got another example coming up here of somebody else, but this idea that there shouldn't be any gay characters in a cartoon because kids watch those. Why is it okay to only feed them straight content?
Because it's normal. That's why.
Because straight and political. That's why.
Where there's only people that are attracted to the opposite sex. Why is that okay, but it's not okay to expose them to the real world, where there is
because
all kinds of
we're the real groomers, and we want to
Identify
his
them.
ignorance, so they won't speak up about being abused.
different names that eat different foods. Like, why is this a problem? This is not a problem. They make this into an issue. It's 2022. Get with it. But let's get to Crowder now, who of course is definitely hiding his own secret.
Yes, the
But
self-loathing
let's
trans guy.
Yep, exactly.
start with his comments and see what he's got to say about this.
So look,
Come on.
here's the macro. I don't care if you want to have a lesbian character. Now,
Yeah, you
there is a
do.
when you have, when
You
you
do
have
very
people
much.
who are gay or lesbian,
Very, 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 very
It's always
much.
been about 2%.
Because that's all you whinge. It's a lot of the things one of the handful of things you whinge about.
Now it's claimed to be 7 when you go LGBTQ, AAIP, and that includes queer and bisexual, but a very small percentage of the population. So it necessitates a conversation with kids. Hold on a second. What is that? Why is a woman making out with a woman? Why are they having a romantic relationship? Because it doesn't necessitate a sexual follow-up question if you just see a man and a woman.
Yeah, that also applies to men on men and women on women kissing. Like, it's not that hard to
Exactly.
explain. And also, what makes you think men and women kissing can't be sexual? Have you seen porn, Crowder?
exactly.
Men and women in porn kiss all the time. So, kissing can be sexual. It cannot be. It can be both. It all depends on context, you idiot. And if two women or two men kiss, it's very easy to explain to kids. Where to the point where they see, they're like, whatever. And I find
Exactly.
funny, I love it how his shirt has Che Guevara wearing a dunce cap, not realizing the irony that he's a dunce.
Because that is the norm.
It
does if it's atypical.
Reporting.
Kids ask
That's what he's
questions.
doing.
It should be ejected into kids shows.
I'm gonna pause there. You shouldn't show kids anything that will cause them to ask questions. That's his argument.
Oh, that is a
Kids are gonna
big
ask questions, so you
self-report
shouldn't.
there, Crowder. That is a self-report
How
there,
else
you
do kids
groomer.
learn? They ask questions. Should you not drive anywhere? You can't go anywhere for the weekend because your kid may ask, "Are we there yet?" or "Where are we going?" And
Oh God, you are the
It's a
most
question.
fucking boring
You can't be
father
answering
in
questions.
the universe.
what a stupid argument to make. Who gives a shit? Explain it. Hey, some people like women, some people like men, some people like everybody. Who gives a shit? This is not. It's very easy to. If you have to explain it, it's very easy to explain. The idea that a kid asking a question is, the reason why you can't be exposing them to anything is really not only bizarre, but definitely unhealthy for the child if they aren't allowed to ask questions and have them answered. But let's go on.
The other thing is, look, there are plenty of lesbian characters and gay characters. There's not a problem with that. Right? The BBC has it as low as a...
You have a problem with them, Crowder, because you're a monster.
In 2021, they said
But
12%.
in reality,
There's no problem with them.
unless they're you, Crowder,
USD
because you
characters
are the
The one who has a problem with every character that isn't a white, straight, cis, Christian, conservative male.
And gay characters, there's not a problem with that. Right? The BBC has it as low as a reference is available at loudofcarter.com. 2021, they said 12% of all US TV characters were LGBTQ. And I've actually seen that number as high as 16%. Let's call it 12, 14%. It's still at least more than double, likely triple that of the pop. There are plenty of gay...
Crowd, that's not even necessarily sure either. Like it's at least like not. I think we've covered before. Like about 90% or so of society is heterosexual. Like 10% maybe be gay, and then maybe like 1% of that is like trans or whatever. That's what we know of last we checked. Now, remember, conservatives were crying about, as the years go on, the identities of LGBT are grown and grown and grown. Eventually, it's going to be all of us. Well, no. But the reason why it's going up is not because it's a societal pandemic, but it's because people are finally being able to recognize who they are without being like killed or something. Just like Kyle, Mike even covered it too, I think, ago. Because remember, historically, like left-handed people were discriminated against because it's evil to be left-handed, and during that time, like 95% of people were left-handed. But then, after people stopped, when people realized that there's nothing wrong with being left-handed, eventually went up to I think like almost 20% of people are now left-handed. That went up a lot, but eventually it evened out or something like that. That will eventually happen with the LGBT community. Maybe 20% of society is LGBT. We don't know. But you know what? Even if it went all the way up to even 100%, so what? Who cares? If people want to do whatever they want, let them.
Gay and lesbian characters. They're just not as popular. So if we're going to...
I don't think them being gay has anything to do with popularity, but okay.
Bitch about appropriation, why do you need to take a straight character and make her lesbian? Just...
You know what? I actually agree with you on that. But here's the thing. Velma, as we've seen canonically, isn't 100% straight. She's bi, most likely. Now, you can maybe make the argument, which actually, Doe will actually bring up later on, about we mentioned about, it might not have been good idea to make a bi character like 100% gay, but Velma was definitely not 100% straight. It was ambiguous at best. They're not turning a straight character gay. But like I said before, if they did it to Daphne, who definitely has a thing for Fred, so she is straight, and made her 100% gay, then I would have a problem with that.
Go make your own. It's not our fault people don't want to watch it, just because we don't want to watch a bunch of cartoon women shop at Bass Pro.
If people don't watch the Scooby-Doo series, if people don't watch the Scooby-Doo series, it won't be because of Velma. It'll probably because the series is 50 years old. Maybe people just don't find it as interesting anymore. Just like I don't anymore. So...
All right. I'm not even sure what the other argument was. You don't want to watch lesbian and gay characters.
You do, Crowder.
You watch Scooby-Doo? Stephen Crowder? Were you really looking forward to this Halloween special? And now you're not going to watch... Oh, yeah, there's no...
Oh, and he says, just, if you don't... Why do you need to take a straight character and make her lesbian? Just go make your own character. Well, I would support that, but here's the thing. You wouldn't support it. You would cry about it if someone did make a completely new gay character.
Because they can't. There's no possible argument they can make. They are just trying to be... not trying to. They are bigoted, is what they are. And they are trying to appeal to that bigoted audience without actually coming out and saying it. I don't like this because this person's lesbian. That's it. That's what this is. And they're trying to...
Now, of course, I need to also point out to people on the left, it's also not a big deal to complain about a character being changed, like their race or sexuality or whatever, if it's not in a bigoted way. Like I said, if they made Daphne gay, I would complain about it. Not because her being gay is wrong, but because you're changing the character. A lot on the left would have a meltdown over it, saying like you're homophobic to criticize that. No. You don't change the lore of a character, just like you don't change the race of a character, their sexuality, whatever they are, you leave them as such. So, a lot of the left need to also recognize that too. But nope, they quickly throw out the homophobia trope, and I don't like it.
Kids are going to ask questions. You know when they ask questions. You can answer them. Really, really stupid. There is a real debate, though, happening. Is this bisexual eraser? Because apparently Velma has been bi. She liked women, she's liked men in the past, so she's actually bisexual.
Or at least ambiguous, like I said. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, there have been times where she's had interest in women. There have been times where she's had interest in men. The main one there is that there's been a few times she seemed interested in Shaggy.
Which is what I've noticed as a kid, too. And then there was the antagonist in The Witch's Ghost, which was the second movie of the animated series in the late 90s, I just remembered. And I think there was someone else, but I can't remember. But yeah, it's been pretty much ambiguous, whereas Daphne, it's been canonically shown that she's with Fred.
But now they're claiming that, no, she's a lesbian. So if there's any real debate to be had, it's maybe this is bisexual erasure. But
yeah, like I said, that's
again,
like honestly probably the only problem. If she's bi and they made her gay, that's not really good. You could have made her like bi, and it wouldn't be a big deal.
But yeah, or even say like she's mainly into girls, but like the guy from The Villain and Shaggy are like a couple of guys that she does have some interest in.
Yeah, it's not that hard to do. So yeah, what do you guys say about the mauled?
Hilarious.
Oh my god, you conservatives always cry about the stupidest things. Please, keep crying and look like idiots. And let out your homophobia too. Oof!
Yep.
A double whammy. Alright, now we got a big laugh there. Now what do we cover?
The Herschel Walker scandal.
So recently, Herschel Walker, who is he's the Republican nominee to become one of Georgia's senators, or replace Warnock, since the name wouldn't come to my head. He is an absolute idiot. He even admitted recently that he is an idiot.
Oh, good.
So recently, he had a scandal where it was revealed back in 2009, he actually forced and paid a woman, actually no, I think it was multiple women, to get abortions. Now, that might not...
it's now multiple.
I think that's what I've read. But now, that may not sound like an issue. Guys, he supports Roe v. Wade being overturned. He's a pro-life motherfucker to the point where he thinks abortion should be illegal with no exceptions. So he is an absolute hypocrite. As Republicans always are.
Murdering. He also probably supports North Carolina's plot to have a law that legalizes murdering women who are seeking abortions.
So yeah, absolute hypocrite. And his idiot kid, Christian Walker, humiliated him and pointed out that he's a liar, and also apparently has a history of being abusive. No surprise there. So let's watch this. As last I checked, he tanked like 5 points in the polls when this scandal started. So hopefully that would make it likely that Warnock wins, because Walker is such an idiot he cannot win.
So within the last 24 hours or so, Herschel Walker's Senate campaign has essentially imploded. And it is really not looking good for him at this moment. His own son, Christian Walker, actually took to Twitter to call him out. So before I get to that, I want to give you a little bit of additional context as to what triggered Christian Walker's response here to condemn his own father's lies. So it all started with a story published by the Daily Beast where Herschel Walker reportedly paid for an abortion in 2009 of his girlfriend at the time, and not only does she have the receipt to prove it, she has the $700 check with his name on it, along with a get well card that he gave her that included his signature. Now, the reason why this is so bad is because Herschel Walker is supposedly pro-life, and when I say he's pro-life, I mean he's a forced birther to the highest extent. Not only does he believe that there should be a total ban on abortions, he doesn't even support abortions in the cases of rape and incest. So he is as extreme as you could possibly be on this particular issue. So this story obviously demonstrates how hypocritical he is. But he denied these allegations, taking to Twitter to say it's a flat lie, a hatchet job, and he's also stating that he plans to sue the Daily Beast for defamation. Now, he later appeared on Fox News with Sean Hannity, and Hannity surprisingly asked him about this particular story, and as you're going to see, Walker again denied the reality of this story.
You sent a $700 check and that you sent it in a get well card. The get well card, it looks like it's included with your signature in the article. Have you seen it, and is that your signature?
I haven't seen it, but I can tell you, I send out so many get well, send out so much of anything, but I can tell you right now, I never asked anyone to get an abortion. I never paid for an abortion, and it's a lie. And I'm going to continue to fight. I tell you, that's what they want. They want this seat, but right now they've energized me even more. And they're not going to take the seat, so they better work it even harder because they've jeopardized my kids. They've jeopardized my family. They think they can threaten me. They think they can scare me. Right now, all that done is it's energized me more.
Yeah, so he's not going to fess up even if his ex-girlfriend has the receipts. This is very incriminating, so it's obvious that he's lying here. And it's also obvious to his son, Christian Walker, because that lie from Herschel Walker right there about the abortion story, that apparently was the straw that broke the camel's back, because Christian Walker, his son, decided to expose the plethora of lies that Herschel Walker has told during the course of his campaign. Walker writes, every family member of Herschel Walker asked him not to run for office because we all knew some of his past, every single one. He decided to give us the middle finger and air out all of his dirty laundry in public while simultaneously lying about it. I'm done. Afterwards, he followed up by saying, I know my mom, and I would really appreciate if my father, Herschel Walker, stopped lying and making a mockery of us. You're not a family man when you left us to bang a bunch of women, threatened to kill us, and had us move over 6 times in 6 months, running from your violence. I don't care about someone who has a bad past and takes accountability, but how dare you lie and act as though you're some moral Christian upright man. You've lived a life of destroying other people's lives. How dare you? Now, for those of you who don't know, Christian Walker's mother is Cindy Grossman, the woman who alleges that Herschel Walker threatened to kill her and also choked her. So he has a lot of reasons to be angry, so seeing his father parade around as some sort of a moral authority, that's a little bit too much for him, and he kept his mouth shut up until this point. Now, Herschel Walker responded on Twitter saying, I love my son no matter what. Now, before deleting this, Christian Walker replied saying, you have 4 kids that we know of, and you weren't in the house raising one of them. You were out cheating and lying. If you loved your kids, you'd be raising them instead of running for a Senate race to boost your ego. Ouch. So, needless to say, this is bad for Herschel Walker. Now, this wasn't necessarily always the stance that Christian Walker wanted to take. He's going to explain why he decided to turn on his father and call him out publicly. But last year in December, actually, Christian Walker was tweeting out support for his father's campaign, saying that he got to hug a future senator and how it was an honor to introduce him in Mar-a-Lago. But in this video that he posted via Twitter, he's going to explain why this latest lie was just too far.
I stayed silent as the atrocities committed against my mom were downplayed. I stayed silent when it came out that my father, Herschel Walker, had all these random kids across the country, none of whom he raised. And you know my favorite issue to talk about is father absence. Surprise, because it affected me. That's why I talk about it all the time, because it affected me. Family values, people. He has 4 kids, 4 different women, wasn't in the house raising one of them. He was out having...
living up to the racist stereotype of blacks?
Sex with other women. Do you care about family values?
I'm surprised. Well, that's not really a surprise. He wants to do something like that just to make all black. See? I'm black and I did this, so all black people are like this.
Done. Everything has been a lie. And so for the right to say I'm being suspicious for saying, hey, I'm done with the lies, when you all have been calling me saying, is this true about your dad? Gosh, we're not going to win Georgia, this candidate, all that's been you. You have no idea what I've been through in my life. You have no idea what me and my mom have survived. We could have ended this on day 1. We haven't. I haven't told any stories. I'm just saying, don't lie. Don't lie on my mom. Don't lie on me. Don't lie on the lives you've destroyed and act like you're some moral family man. Y'all should care about that, conservatives. And then for people on the left to act as though I'm responsible for all of the things that he has done. I've talked about father, I've talked about these issues because they've been close to me. Because they matter to me, because I went through it.
You're still an idiot,
though.
though.
I talked about it. So when you say, well, talk about your dad, but I am. I'm saying this
but
behavior.
It sucks that you had to go for all that as a kid, if that's true.
You don't have to like my politics. You don't have to like me. You don't have to. I'm just saying I'm done with the lies. We were told at the beginning of this he was going to get ahead of his past, hold himself accountable, all of these different things, and that would have been fine. Go ahead. He didn't do any of that. Everything's been a lie. Everything's been downplayed. Everything's been cutting corners. The whole thing. And whose expense is that at? Me, my mom, as we're chased down by the media, we're terrorized, all these different things. People are questioning my authenticity. I'm done. Don't lie. Don't put this on me. This is a candidate issue, not a me issue. I wouldn't have spoken out if there weren't all these lies every day.
So, needless to say, this is really bad for Herschel Walker, and I'm assuming that his campaign is currently scrambling to try to find some way to get past this, right? But Christian Walker is the son of Herschel Walker. His mother was put through hell by Herschel Walker, so he knows Herschel better than anyone else. So he has no reason to lie about his father. So I absolutely believe Christian Walker over Herschel Walker here. I don't think he has a reason to lie about this. I think that it's true that he kind of has seen the lies and it's been building up and he's kept his mouth shut, but up until a point, the dam kind of just bursts open and you can't take it anymore, and you've got to respond and rebut some of these lies, especially if his mother is being dragged through the mud as well. Now, you'll be shocked to learn that Republicans are actually defending Herschel Walker over Christian Walker. In fact,
no surprise.
As the Anti-Journal-Constitution reports, one Republican official close to Walker was already shifting responsibility for the candidate's potential downfall, saying Christian Walker is solely to blame if Herschel loses the race. Now, in addition, Newsmax propagandist Greg Kelly slammed Christian Walker on Twitter, saying, "Never betray your family. Christian Walker has disgraced himself. You will find that this ugly smear in October, aka October Surprise, will not work. Herschel Walker is going to the U.S. Senate." Christian Walker responded saying he betrayed the family when he destroyed 4 children's lives, then lied about it all and lied again yesterday. How dare you? And I've just got to say, this is peak partisan hackery to have Republican propaganda.
You know what? That is true. To Christian's defense, he is being consistent, even going after his dad and going after his, and ideologically, this would politically hurt him if his dad lost, because his dad would do the policies he wanted, but if he's willing to be consistent about it and point out his dad's flaws to the point, maybe it does cost him the election, hopefully. Like, we gotta at least be consistent on, hey, good on you, Christian, for once being consistent, unlike the rest of you right-wing idiots.
Propagandists not believe the son of a politician who has no reason to lie, nothing to gain from this, and everything to lose from this. It goes to show you how rotten the brains of these Republican propagandists are. Now, Christian Walker released another video specifically responding to Republicans, and he kind of reiterates what he said again before, but nonetheless, let's listen to what he has to say.
And just 2 more things I have to address, and then I'm done with this buffoonery nutjob land. This is atrocious. People on the right,
ironic you say, because you're a nut job still.
With my dad last year, they're saying, "Well, you supported them all last year and all this year. You look suspicious." No. You all have been calling me saying, "Why aren't you on the campaign trail with your dad? Why aren't you helping him out? This looks weird. You should go help him." And I've said to you calmly, I'm not getting involved. You don't know my family life. I did one event last year when we were told he was going to get ahead of his past and hold himself accountable. None of that happened. Everything's been a lie. So for me to tell you I'm not getting involved, and then you also be flooding my DMs and calling me saying, "I didn't know all this about your dad, we're going to lose the Senate race," and then when I simply say, "I'm done with the lies," you go, "Well, Christian looks suspicious." Excuse me? I haven't told one story about what I experienced with him. I'm just simply saying, don't lie. And then for certain political pundits to be pulling up old pictures I posted of my dad, thinking they can police and determine what my relationship with my dad was. If you want to pull stuff up, I'll pull stuff up. Don't try me. Don't test my authenticity. All of this has been a lie, and you've known it. You've known. So don't you dare. And then to the left, who says, "Well, he did all this to your mom, and you were still with him, and, you know, that's weird." You know nothing about my life. My parents went through a dirty divorce. I went through a lot as a child, and you don't know anything. You don't know the ebbs and flows of our relationship. Nobody knows anything. So for everyone making these wild theories and whatever, that's crazy. This is about a bunch of lies. Again, I could, if I had an issue with whatever, I could have ended this day. That's not my intention. My intention is don't lie about your life at the expense of me, my mom, and all of the people that you've affected throughout your life. You don't get to pretend you're some moral family guy. You don't get to pretend all these things. Talk policy, talk normal. Do not lie.
Yeah. So I think that he's right to feel frustrated. And one thing that I'll point out that rubbed me the wrong way is how in both of these videos that we just watched, he tried to shoehorn in some sort of a critique of the left that they're supposedly lobbing at him. I haven't heard a single leftist critique Christian Walker in this instance. I don't know who is blaming you for still associating with your father, but
I mean, you would be surprised how many idiot people you find on Twitter, Mike, as I always do. But I would not be surprised if that indeed happens.
You aren't guilty for what he did to your mother. Families are complicated. I get it. Your hands are clean in this particular instance. So I think that he's just trying to critique the left so it looks as if he's playing both sides because he really has made a name for himself in Republican circles. So perhaps he wants to keep that grift going. Either way, I've got to say, I do feel bad for Christian Walker in this instance. You can actually hear the pain in his voice, and this isn't an act. This is somebody who just can't take the lies that have affected his family, I'm assuming, in a really negative way. And I've got to say, this leads me to kind of believe that perhaps I misjudged Christian Walker because I always viewed him, largely due to his online persona, as this privileged, spoiled brat who thought he was better than everyone else. And, you know, this is kind of in part due to the way that I was raised, right? I had a pretty stable childhood with the exception of living in really bad poverty. So that kind of colored my perspective of life to where if you're deprived of material well-being, you know, that's the worst. But even if you have, you know, wealth, even if you come from a family where you're taken care of, at least when it comes to money, you still can have a really bad life. And with Christian Walker, he just really didn't talk about all of this. So it lets us get a glimpse into who Christian Walker really is. He's dropping the facade. He's leaving behind this persona to just be real and authentic. And it works for him. He should do this more often. He should be upfront with us more often because it really helps us to understand who he is. And as I said, I feel sympathy for him in this instance because you can tell he's actually hurting. Now, I'd be remiss to not point out a really poorly aged tweet by right-wing provocateur Glenn Greenwald shared by David Dole on Twitter where he wrote, Christian Walker is very smart and independent-minded and is going to be driving liberals absolutely crazy for a very long time to come. Oh, that tweet aged
He's gonna drive
so
us and saying he's just an idiot. But we're gonna point out when he does something right, but we're still gonna point out that he's still an idiot.
poorly. And now Christian Walker is presumably driving Republicans nuts because love him or hate him, Christian Walker is attacking the GOP's one shot at taking back this seat in Georgia. And they don't care who it is. They don't care if it's a hypocrite who's a liar and a domestic abuser. They don't care. They just want a Republican in that seat who's going to vote with Republicans. So if they have to vote in the literal reincarnation of Satan, they don't care. All they care about is the politics of this situation. So they're not going to take into account what Christian Walker is saying. GOP operatives are going to do what they can to push Herschel Walker through. And what they're already trying to do is use the Trump playbook, where you kind of just muscle through all of these allegations, you ignore them, you brush them aside, and you keep on going. That's been successful for Trump. Will it be successful for Herschel Walker? I mean, we'll have to wait and find out. But just stop for a moment. We just heard...
Like I said, immediately he lost 5 points in the polls when this happened, but that does not. But that does not mean he's going to lose, though. Anything can happen. The election's like a month away still.
A ton of bombshell allegations about Herschel Walker, and just consider this: he could still win. This man can still become a U.S. senator, despite all of the things that we know about him, despite knowing about his past, despite knowing about his present and how he is unqualified to be a candidate because he very clearly mentally does not have the capacity to serve and have this much power, but yet here we are. He still could win. He's in a neck-and-neck race with Raphael Warnock. So either way, this is a bad look for his campaign. And whether or not this hurts him, obviously I hope that it hurts his campaign, but I do feel a lot of sympathy for Herschel Walker's children, and Christian Walker specifically, because he's giving us a side of him that we didn't see before. And you know, to have a parent like this who's worshipped by everyone, but deep down you know his dark past, and you've got to kind of fake it to make it publicly, I feel like that's really sad. And it tells us a lot about Christian Walker and why he's so angry all the time and why he condemns his own community. He's just lashing out at everyone. So, you know, you kind of see him in a different light because of this. But either way, I respect him for what he did. Speaking out publicly against a family member at a crucial time, that's no easy task. It takes a lot of courage that I don't think others would have. So love him or hate him, I have my feelings about Christian Walker, but in this instance, he absolutely, I think, deserves our respect for this move, because there's no way what he did was easy, and it's something that took a lot of guts to do, so I respect him for it. So yeah, we'll leave that there.
So yeah, what do you gotta say about Walker's scandal?
That is so weird. But honestly, it's not a surprise. I don't know how much it's going to hurt it. It's really isn't a surprise coming from a hypocrite like him.
Alright, so now, on to the final topic.
Dave Rubin and Dennis Prager defend circumcision. Here we go. Ugh.
Oh god, here we go. Dave Rubin, Rave Dubin, as we all know him by. I agree with that. And Dennis Prager, of course, the idiot that runs PragerU, defending circumcision as always, to the point where they were Prager was literally fawning over it, like it was like the most awesomest thing in the world. Let's just watch this barbaric practice being laughed at.
Our boy Dave Rubin gave us quite a few high-level ideas here that I want to share with you. This is glorious. So this was originally from the Dave Rubin Clips Twitter account. And then also I have some other headlines that I want to share with you before we wrap up this segment. But let's start with Dave and all of his high-level ideas.
It's interesting because, as you know, we just had Justin a couple of weeks ago, and we've got baby number two on the way. But we did the bris at 8 days. And
so a bris, for those of you who don't know, is a ceremony where you circumcise the baby. In other words, in layman's terms, it's a ceremony where you chop off the tip of your baby's dick.
Absolutely
That's what
disgusting.
it is. Now, some might take issue with that framing. If they do take issue with it, they are incorrect. They are wrong, because that is objectively what we're talking about here.
And, it's if you look at it from a purely secular point of view, it's somewhat of a crazy thing to do.
Yeah, it is a crazy thing to do.
Correct. It is not somewhat
That's
of a
why it
crazy
should be
thing to do.
illegal.
It is a crazy thing to do. It's not up in the air. It's not, well, maybe. No. It is crazy.
Bring this perfect thing into the world, and then you're cutting this child. That's what you're doing. And I remember David and I had this talk before about our thoughts on everything, and my overriding feeling about it was that my parents did it, their parents did it, their parents' parents did it, and way beyond that for something like 5,783 years.
3,000. Well, really.
Classic Dave Rubin moment. Actually, you're not even close. But anyway.
3,200.
Yes.
Yeah, or 4,000, actually.
4,000, right, the calendar, but we go back to Abraham. Okay. But the point is that it's been done for a long, long time. And
So they're admitting here, and this is honest, I don't think they know exactly what they're admitting to, but they're admitting that the roots of it are ancient and religious. So in other words, it's not some scientific thing that they proved we should do because you got a whole bunch of people in white coats in a lab crunching numbers and looking through No, it's religious in nature.
I felt am I just wiser than everyone that came before me?
Well, you're definitely not wiser than everybody that came before you, but if on this particular issue you decided, it seems kind of crazy to chop off the tip of my baby's dick, so I'm not going to do it, on that issue you would have been wiser. Your original skepticism was merited, Mr. Rubin.
Oh, God bless you. Oh, that's so the perfect reaction.
Oh, God.
How about we just chop your whole dick off, Prager?
They're just tradition humpers.
That's
what it
is.
Well, like a lot of people before me did it, well, I'm going to do it.
So giddy over actually mutilating your kid.
All sorts of idiotic shit for thousands of years. The idea that was like the game changer in their mind, like, well, I don't know, man, my mom did it, my mom's mom did it, my mom's mom's mom did it, so, like, fuck, who the fuck am I? Jesus Christ. Okay, by this logic, what about female genital mutilation? There are places in the world that they've done that for thousands of years.
They're only against because Muslims do it. That's it.
In some places. What about
whereas I'm against both.
Child sacrifice, which was a very common human practice for a very long time.
But not only
What about
they slice
rain
off
dances,
the
which I'm sure used to be incredibly common.
and slice up the labia, they then go in and internally slice the girls up as well.
Hey man, my dad did it. My dad's dad did it. Well, in this case, that wouldn't be your dad, your dad's dad. That would be like your great grandfather, right? And then your great grandfather, so on and so forth, right? But hey, they did that for a while. So if they did it, good enough for me. Why wouldn't I do it? What do I think? I'm just smarter than these people? Yes. The more time goes by, the more information we have available, the more data that's available, the more able we are to embrace empiricism in decision making. But he just swaps that all aside. And look, this is the most conservative instinct. Tradition for tradition's sake. So there doesn't have to be any other compelling argument to continue a tradition. Just the fact that it's a tradition, they're like, okay, that works. Well, what about places where there's a tradition to keep women covered up? This is something that Dave Rubin and Dennis Prager argue against, and they, oh my god, this is terrible, this is backwards Muslims and Islamic countries. And they look at them like, well, what the fuck? Come to modernity, bitch. What are you talking about? Don't cover up your women. What if she doesn't want to be covered? Just because it's a tradition, who gives a fuck? Now all of a sudden it's, oh, tradition! Tradition makes perfect sense.
So of course we're against that. But if it's freaking Christianity and Judaism, then it's okay. God, disgusting.
That's what they believe.
They think they are.
Leftists believe they are the best people who ever lived.
Oh my god. Oh my god. As these guys are sucking themselves off for genitally mutilating babies. They say, but look at the hubris of the lefties.
I mean, yeah, I think I am better in that regard. That I think genital mutilation of men and women should not be allowed until they're 18. Yeah, I do think that. Eat shit if you don't like hearing that.
What the fuck, man? I don't know why these guys pretend like they're not totally arrogant and convinced in 100% of their ideology and the things that they say. They give off way more certitude than anybody I've ever seen on the left. Oh, these lefties think they're God's gift to Earth. Well, I will say this for sure. If there is somebody on the left who decides, hey, I don't want to gently mutilate my baby, so I won't do that, on that particular issue, they are way above and beyond what you guys have done with your line of reasoning for doing what you did.
They do. That's why they tear down Lincoln and Washington. We are better than them. They don't hold a candle to these people. By the way, I just want you to know I have two sons, as you'll have, God willing, and I had I don't cry easily.
How are you going to do that when you had your dick chopped off?
I most remember sobbing was at their bris, at their circumcision, exactly for what you.
He's kid. He was crying tears of joy because his kids were gently mutilated.
Yep.
What the hell? What's wrong with you? Come on.
He's a Jew, and it's customary to chop little boys' dicks off.
Yeah, and Christianity too.
Yeah.
Actually, it's more of an American thing. Not a lot of Christian countries do that compared to like Judaism in America. Like Europe does not really have this. And a very weird thing too, South Korea has this a lot. They don't have a lot of Jews or Christians.
4,000 years.
Oh my god.
This is just sad.
It would be one thing if you were crying because you feel terrible because of the shrieks and the cries and the pain that your baby's in. Like, oh my god, what are you doing? Oh, my poor baby, my baby's crying, my baby's bleeding. Oh my god, this is terrible. And if you're crying for that reason, you are correct to react that way. But if you're crying because it's so beautiful when we genitally mutilate little boys' penises. What the fuck is wrong with you, bro?
Yeah, really. It's
well, my tradition. My tradition. Fuck your tradition.
Based.
You almost could come up with a more cruel example of a tradition that is so deleterious because it still exists primarily just for tradition's sake, and it is one of the worst things you could do, right? It really is. It really is. And the argument they make now, all these like scientific rationalizations and justifications after the fact are so weak. Because I'm sure you've all heard, oh, well, you know, it sort of like limits the spread of STDs and stuff, bro. Okay, well, I have a way you can eliminate STDs. You want to guarantee you're not going to have an STD? You want to lower the number of STD STDs by like double or triple what you lower it by just from circumcising. Here, you ready? Totally castrate your baby. Don't just mutilate the tip of their dick. Take off their dick and their balls. Just get rid of it. Get rid of everything.
Oh, whoa!
Man, you are really protecting against STDs if you don't have a penis, right?
Okay, that's a little bit... Whoa. Okay,
Did you do
I
that?
think I'm a little tiny bit overboard.
Well, of course, he's being facetious, too, at the same time, remember?
Yeah,
Is everybody listening goes,
being a bit...
what the...
I
No!
understand the point, but it's like... Yeah, you're going a bit far there.
But it also points the absurdity of circumcision in the first place, too.
Of course not. Why would I do that? Well, don't you want to limit the STD? It's not. It's a terrible argument, and again, these are the more modern arguments, the ones that like they come up with the scientific rationalization and justification as to, oh, actually, no, this is a good thing. You don't even understand, bro. No, it is definitely not. It's definitely not a good thing. And by the way, this comes from somebody, of course, who is circumcised. I was circumcised, but I understand it was fucking genital mutilation. I was genitally mutilated as a baby.
I'm not prepared to end it.
I was a child.
It just felt crazy.
I was,
I just know so much. I just know so much. I won't
about
do this
6.
thing. The people before me were so dumb. It's almost grotesque.
Yeah, no, totally. It's so grotesque. You know, hey, my ancestors used snake oil to try to cure cancer. So I'd be such a bad person if I didn't try to rub snake oil over my cancer. What kind of idiot? This is a new low for Dave Rubin. This is a new fucking low. And this guy's always
been getting any lower?
Beyond
I'm surprised.
God, right? But Jesus
So his
Christ,
brain's
man.
in perpetual recovery mode from taking in all these idiotic low-level ideas.
I agree with that.
Wow. Wow. Imagine watching this and thinking they're nailing it. Oh, man. Insane. Anyway, before we head out, let me just give you a little bit more here. So, Diamond and Silk gave us quite a moment I wanted to share with you.
That your best bet is to vote for Herschel Walker. Okay? Forget what you done heard. That is distractions.
Right.
That's when President Trump was running. Remember all of the distractions.
I remember all of
he said he gonna grab him by this. And we was like, well, I'm so happy he grabbing somebody by the feet instead of the D.
Come on, man. Oh, man. Holy shit. They are fucking hilarious, don't lie. They know. They have to know, right? They know. They know the role they're playing. They know the role they're playing. They're not fucking like... They're like... They're way smarter than they are pretending they are. And they know, like, shit, we can cash some nice-ass checks if we just tell these Republicans whatever the fuck they want to hear. What a line, man. We was happy they was grabbing him by the D, grabbing him by the P, and not the D. In other words, is he a sexual assaulter? Sure, that's fine. At least he's not gay. Oh, man, holy shit. Look at that moral code right there. So it is better to be a sexual assaulter as long as you're straight than not be a sexual assaulter and be gay.
It's better being a pedophile than being a... actually, no, you'd be useful if you're a pedophile.
I mean, these are all religious fundamentalists. These are all Christian fundamentalists, so they think it's okay to assault women usually, or make justifications for it.
I don't know, guys. You're that's a little extreme. I'd say that's just a little extreme there. And by the way, the real operative part of that story, very few people actually highlighted, which is he said, I grabbed him by the pussy, and then he said, quote, I don't even wait.
Yep.
So I don't even wait sounds to me like, you're not waiting for consent. You're not waiting for some sort of, situation to naturally unfold where both sides are willing participants. You just, go up and grab them by the pussy. So that was the problem with that. Because if he was like, hey, I grabbed women by the pussy, but it was consensual, it's like, okay, fine, that's, have fun. But it didn't seem like it was. But then he did go on to say, they just let you do it. Well, if you don't even wait and you just do it, then how do you know they're letting you do it? Like, there'd be no indication of consent, right? So that was the problem. But here's where we are, man. And they're talking, of course, about Herschel Walker. The story about Herschel Walker is, even though he says he's against abortion in every case, no exception for rape, for incest, or life of the mother. Against it in every single case. He says it's murder, the woman should be punished, the doctor should be punished.
He thinks the
maybe
woman
get
and the
jail
doctor
time,
should be murdered extrajudicially.
And he, of course, funded an abortion in 2009. So, you know, he facilitated a murder. The woman he slept with is a murderer. The doctor is a murderer. And by his own logic, all that would be illegal. He'd have to lock everybody up. And by the way, we just learned today
be locking them up. No. No. North Carolina's already legal.
This story is one of his baby mamas.
Murdering women who are seeking abortion.
So in other words, she has another kid with him.
Oh no!
But they decided at one point to abort
and kill women who have had abortions. So, and same with doctors.
Jesus Christ, man.
George Tiller.
So what they're saying is, I don't actually have a standard. I don't have a standard. Because if you think he's a murderer or he paid for a murder, you know, that's holy shit. You should be apoplectic about that, but they're not. They're not. Because to them, what they understand that the left usually doesn't is that it's all about power. They say, look, ultimately, I don't care what he did in his personal life as long as he will vote against abortion when he's in there, then I don't care. You could have aborted 20 kids, but since you're going to vote against abortion when you're in the Senate, it's fine because the net good you're doing outweighs the bad you're doing. That's how they think about it, right? It's like it's a raw calculation like that. But there's certainly no principles involved here, that's for sure. And then we also have this. A day after Elon Musk announced his intention to buy Twitter, after all, and avert a trial, a private equity firm set to finance part of the deal has reportedly backed out. So he's losing some of the money that he needed in order to make the Twitter purchase. I don't know what happens from here. And then also, Herschel Walker is doing damage control, and he's doing a very poor job at it.
As everyone knows, I had a real battle with mental health. Even wrote a book about it. And by the grace of God, I've overcome it.
All right, so I think he's doing this because he's trying to get ahead of future stories. Because he's afraid, I think, Christian Walker is going to tell some of the stories of physical abuse.
Which he did
that
already.
His dad was involved in. Because Christian hinted at that when he did his videos and his tweets responding to his dad. Because basically saying, like, I'm done with your lies. You just lie all the time. You lie relentlessly. At least tell the truth. You told me at the beginning of this thing you were going to tell the truth. Get ahead of your past. You didn't do that. So now I'm here to tell you it's all a fraud. Tell the fucking truth. This is what Christian said. And in one of those rants, he said, I haven't told any stories. And he's, the implication is, I could tell stories. And he says something about, the physical abuse that this guy did to him and his mother. To Christian and his mother. And so now Herschel's doing this thing, I had mental illness. What are you trying to get ahead of now?
Warnock's a preacher who doesn't tell the truth.
We'll find out in a couple of weeks.
Warnock doesn't tell the truth. What about you? What about you? You just lied shamelessly in front of the world when there were all the receipts under the sun for the fact that you paid for that 2009 abortion. You just lied about it. Your own son is like, Jesus Christ, you fucking lied about it. And he was on your side. He wanted you to win the race. And he's like, stop fucking lying. And are you saying, Warnock's a liar? Oh, please. My ass cheeks.
He doesn't even believe in redemption. I'm Herschel Walker. Saved by grace.
The old Christian trick, baby. Oh, God. God is with me. God loves me, bro. I've turned myself over to God, so anything I've ever done ever, just don't pay attention to it. All right. Well, there you go. That's what's going on. This stuff is ugly.
Yep, so what do you guys say about that? Rave, Dubin, and Prager defending circumcision disgustingly.
No surprise because he's a total loser.
Yeah, circumcision needs to be banned until you're 18. Same goes for FGM. When you're old enough, then you can decide what you want to do with your body. And
the only drama, the thing for me was that I had it when I was 6. But I was kind of having problems with pulling the foreskin back. And that was why I had it in the end. Actually, it turned out to be a silver lining because it discovered my dad's... because when I had to relearn things, my dad actually discovered his kidney disease. So, in a weird way, that turned out to be a good thing in a way.
It's more like a medical reason, unlike the crap they're doing now, pretty much. But yeah.
Yeah, like the medical thing is the only justification, and that's what it was for me.
Yeah, but of course we all know most reasons it's not that whatsoever. You're like a rare exception.
Yeah.
And it sucks you had to do it when you were 6. Alright, so that will wrap it up this time. See you guys next time, when we can't wait to make fun of Kyle's way to end the Russo-Ukraine war and other things. So, see you guys next time.
Yeah.